Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video from Tinfoil Hat Advised. So in today's video, we're going to start by looking at the timeline of when coronavirus started and kind of what happened with China alerting the World Health Organization, who from now on will be referred to as the WHO, partly because I find it funny and partly because it's quicker. So when did China first notify the WHO and kind of what happened from there as a brief timeline. And then we're going to look at what's happened with China since and what they've done to make themselves potentially moving forward the world leading superpower in all aspects, but specifically what they've done to take themselves forward in terms of being a world leading superpower for health. Now, there are bigger conspiracies that are going to relate to this video, such as, does that mean potentially that coronavirus was leaked intentionally by the Chinese? Did it even start in China, or are they just capitalizing on it? Many other questions that get raised by this video as other conspiracies that kind of are spin-offs of the conspiracy of China utilizing this situation to become a world-leading superpower and get ahead of Russia and America as the world's leading massive powerhouse. But that's not to be gone through today. Today we are specifically going to look at this one thing of what they've done to move themselves forward in terms of medical health. We will look at the other aspects in other videos, and that is all to come in the weeks to follow. So, on the 31st of December 2019, China took the step to notify the World Health Organization that they had dozens of pneumonia-like cases in Wuhan. Then, on the 1st of January 2020, the CDC, the American-based CDC, identified the possible infection area was from a seafood market in Wuhan. Now, obviously, the interesting thing about this is the first place where they went and said it was from originally was a seafood market. Yet we've been told repeatedly it came from a bat now. Now, we are going to look at this in another video, but it's just an interesting one to think about. Doesn't quite add up. By the 7th of January, China had confirmed its first death from coronavirus. The virus then quickly spread across Asia, hitting Thailand, Korea, and Japan before landing up in the States on the 21st of January. Weirdly, on the 21st of January, globally, there was still no checks being done on flights from Wuhan. Now that means, and I genuinely mean, no countries at that point were stopping and checking people for symptoms, for symptoms from the flights from Wuhan. It took until the 22nd of January for countries to actually take action on this. Once it had been announced that it had got to America was when the Western world started taking it seriously. Up until then, it had been basically ignored by pretty much everyone, including the World Health Organization. Now that is really worrying, and it does ask the question, was it allowed to spread on purpose? Even with this, it took China until the 23rd of January to lock down Wuhan, and that is another huge wait time from when they first themselves identified there was a potential problem to actually stepping forward to look at dealing with it. So by the 23rd of January, it is well established that this is now an international pandemic. It has spread across multiple countries and is clearly spreading on an international scale. The weirdest thing about this is the World Health Organization on the 23rd of January, after the US had confirmed its first confirmed cases, put out a statement saying it was categorically not a World Health emergency. Now that's really worrying and really weird, and we're going to look into it in a bit more detail shortly. On the 24th of January, France then became the next victim with 2 confirmed cases. After that, pretty much day by day, every other country started to fall. So let's look at that again, just in brief review. We've reached the 24th of January, almost a full month since the World Health Organization was first notified, and they have still done nothing at this point. A month has gone past, and the World Health Organization, the organization all countries look to lead them and advise them on what to do to keep their people healthy, was adamant at this stage it was still nothing to worry about. Now that's really concerning, but in what we're going to look at in a short while, you're going to see why they potentially took that viewpoint. So now we've gone through the timeline and some of the weird bits about the timeline, we're now going to look at today's conspiracy in a bit more detail. So the conspiracy today is that China have used the World Health Organization and the coronavirus in order to gain favor with World Health Organizations globally. Now obviously there isn't just the World Health Organization, there is multiple other specific medical organizations in each individual country. Now, if you're going to try and grab power over medical health and to be the leading superpower for medical health, you need all those health systems to be reliant on you. So that's what we're going to look at today. Has China really done this kind of on purpose? And have they utilized it either way, even if they didn't do it on purpose, in order to gain massive power surges in the way that they can potentially control the world? So in short, let's have a really quick look at one aspect of this. Why health? Why would China need to control health? So the answer is fairly simple. If you control health, you control wealth. At the minute, all that people are concerned about and care about, and not just during the coronavirus times, but beforehand, was the life expectancy of human beings. How can we deal with medical advancements? How can we beat cancer? How can we beat this? How can we beat that? If you control the manufacture of medical goods, and you control the information that is put out about medicines and about the way, and you're leading the way about how medicine should be conducted, you control a monumental amount of power as well as a monumental amount of wealth. So it's a really smart move from China and a really big power play to get past the United States and to get past Russia. If you're not entirely sure how this is going to work, we're going to explain it for you. So China has an ongoing trade battle with the USA. They are not interested in trying to get into a resources battle with Russia because Russia has a very strong grip on their resources economy and has a monumental amount of resources in terms of oil, gas, coal, etc., etc., etc. So if you are China and you're trying to get ahead of these two superpowers, how do you go about doing it? Well, the only thing no one owns is health. Now, anyone who knows me knows I have a rule in life which was taught to me at a very young age. And that rule is 6 articles for anything, 3 for, 3 against. That is my minimum research level for every subject. Now, I have done that again with this, and that's why it takes me quite a while to put these videos out, because I do try and do as much research as possible, both for and against it, and come up with as many truths as possible. But I will admit that quite a bit of the information which seems the most legitimate for this conspiracy theory has actually come from one article. Now, I am going to put some screenshots up for you. You're going to see them. You can read them. You can read the full article itself, and I'll put a link in the description below. But that is not to say or suggest that was the only article I went off for this. I have done much more reading beyond this article. It's just that this article really does summarize it very, very well. So the article is from foreignpolicy.com, and in a short while you'll see some screenshots where I am basically directly quoting from the article. So, despite the very public knowledge that they tried to cover up the initial figures for their COVID-19 outbreak and gave false information which dramatically slowed the global response, China are now pitching to the world that their containment of the virus was a huge success, and that they're using this leverage to gain power with international health organizations, as we discussed earlier. Strangest thing regarding this is how the WHO just assumed China was correct and told the entire world information direct from China without even checking their facts and figures. They didn't even get into the country until the end of January because China wouldn't let them in. In this period, the WHO also completely ignored warnings from Taiwanese doctors, all of which have now proven to be correct. For perspective here, the World Health Organization is a United Nations body, and it should not be ignoring any one country. The World Health Organization has sung China's praises throughout this entire outbreak, even when they were outed for falsifying figures, delaying the world response. The World Health Organization is quoted as saying, "In the face of a previously unknown virus, China has rolled out perhaps the most ambitious, agile and aggressive disease containment in history." They went on to say that China had gained invaluable time for the response in an all-of-government, all-of-society approach that has averted hundreds of thousands of cases. And here's the kicker with all this: protecting the global community and creating a strong first line of defense against international spread. This was after the visit on the 30th of January. It had already spread globally by that point. It's a ridiculous statement. But the Director of Health Law at the World Health Organization, Lawrence Gostin, stated the method has major human rights concerns. But this has not come out officially from the World Health Organization. This is one statement from one man from within that organization, however factually accurate it may be. Just an FYI, China threatened a death sentence for those who broke confinement. The World Health Organization continued to rain praise on China in many quotes, but while singing its praises to the world, it completely negated to mention China's failures in treating non-coronavirus patients, the human rights cost to its methods, the economic impact, and the many psychological issues it caused its people through its methods. Virologist Richard Nair is quoted as saying, "The big lockdown, centralized quarantine, and contact tracing," that's right, they contact traced all of their population through cameras, even ones at entrance and exits to homes. But we'll come to that later. The World Health Organization continued to rain its ridiculously blind praise on China, saying, China reported and isolated all individuals with lab-confirmed COVID-19. However, they only announced the asymptomatic cases with lab-confirmed infections publicly in April. That's right, April. The World Health Organization has categorically stated that China is not hiding anything. But it's clear to the entire world they are. Anyway, that's enough for the proof that something weird is happening between China and the World Health Organization. What are China standing to gain from all this? So, here is where it gets interesting and a little bit intricate. So, bear with me and try and keep up. During the last recession, China took what was seen as a huge gamble by investing trillions of dollars in their own economy. However, they used this money predominantly to secure their own exportation routes. China's economy is largely made up of exports. And what they did with this money was to go out and invest it in their export routes. They now basically own the Silk Road. For those of you who don't know what it is, the Silk Road is the main trading route globally. Now, it used to be an actual physical road that went all the way across Russia and all sorts of stuff. It is now the term used for the major shipping lanes and the major transport routes across the globe. So what did China do? They went and invested this money buying up major ports on that Silk Road. They bought up ports and large amounts of land across Africa, Sri Lanka, and they even own a port in Italy. They have invested billions in other countries' infrastructures, and now to a large extent even own pretty much most of the road routes in some African countries. It's actually a bit crazy when you start looking into what they own. This investment in those countries has seen huge economic growth for those countries involved. And as such, they've now built very tight-knit relationships with China because they can only see the current positives for them. So as you might be able to see, there is a big plan afoot for China. This isn't now just about the trade routes. This has become much, much bigger, and they have been working on this for decades. So, they're in a position now where they own their own exportation routes, and they are the world's leading exporters. In 2018, they exported $2.4 trillion worth of goods. For some context on this, the USA in the same year exported $1.6 trillion. It's nowhere near, it's nearly half. And if you add in China's, should we say, subsidiary countries, the ones that are under their power, it all gets much, much worse. So as you can see in the figures, once you add in Chinese Hong Kong and Chinese Taipei, that figure becomes a huge $3.2 trillion a year being exported from China. So we've established they own their own trade routes and they are the world's leading exporters. So they're making a damn good use of those trade routes. And there is no one that can come close to them for speed of manufacture, speed of export, and general mobility in terms of just getting stuff made and produced in a really quick turnaround time when the world needs it. So you might be thinking, what has all this got to do with a conspiracy about healthcare growth? Well, if you are the only person who can very fast manufacture new things, then you are going to be at the forefront of manufacturing medical healthcare equipment. And as we're seeing right now, they are the only place you can go to get large quantities of masks. And that's what everyone needs right now. They are the only place that can manufacture the vast, vast volumes required to supply health organizations across the globe. Now we're talking about one thing here right now, masks. But there is also a desperate need right now for things like ventilators and all other sorts of equipment. And that's just right now in this current pandemic. So the crazy thing about all this is, whose factories were the first to get back online? China's. Whose cities were the least affected by all this? China's. Now you could say this is from great management of the pandemic. However, it never even reached most of their major cities. And they didn't lock down Wuhan for a month. That's not got to do with great control of a virus. There's something suspicious about that. So whilst the world struggles to produce just enough to get by with general life, and yes, you could argue factories are still online in most countries. However, they are producing a bare minimum and they are running on skeleton staff, as has been shown by the fact that even America have had to reach out to China for basic PPE equipment. In the current situation, China stand to make an absolute fortune from PPE equipment and other medical equipment that they can manufacture at twice the speed of anyone else globally. Whilst this pandemic continues to tear apart the rest of the world, they are back to normal, and they were the quickest country to get back to normal. Now you could argue again, this is due to their fantastic management of the pandemic. But again, I'm going to point out the fact it didn't even reach most of their major cities. It's absolutely mind-blowing. That is not down to great pandemic management. They left it a month before they did anything. How did this not spread from city to city? They should have had cases in nearly every major city because people travel a lot in China. So if any of you are left unsure at this point, I just want to point you to what's on screen now. There is a potentially $6 trillion industry available and up for grabs. So even if this isn't a power play for China to get a grip on the rest of the world, it is very much a power play to get a grip of a $6 trillion worldwide industry that will only get bigger and bigger. We are obsessed with health, and rightly so. But if you can own that business, or at least the majority share of it, wow, your economy is set for life. Add into this that Chinese doctors are being flown around the world to support countries in their knowledge of coronavirus and how to best battle it. And China are dramatically moving themselves forward in their, I guess, world social status as a medical leading power. They have a tight-knit relationship with the World Health Organization now, and there are countries that are already fully dependent on them for their knowledge around coronavirus. There are countries across Africa and most of the Middle East now who are buying into China as their leading light, as the place to go for support, the place to go for knowledge, and the place to help lead them to a better future. So by now, half the world is reliant on China. And the half that aren't fully reliant are basically reliant on China, because China are the only ones producing and able to manufacture the medical equipment necessary to deal with these situations that are arising. You'd be surprised as well how many world organizations, and I mean by world organizations I mean governments, are buying most of their medical equipment direct from China already. So what does this all actually mean? Well, basically that by the end of this pandemic, China will pretty much control world health. And like we said at the start of the video, if you control health, you control wealth. And with wealth comes power. They will also have the world by the nuts when it comes to anything and everything medical. Because, as we've already established, they are now being seen as the forefront of medical technology and medical knowledge with dealing with pandemics. They are being hailed by the world's biggest health organization for how they manage this pandemic and how their medical health system works. And they control all of the manufacturing and all of the manufacturing trade routes. I mean, it's scary. We all know the big red dragon is coming, but geez, looking into this has made it clear how quickly it's coming, and how powerful it is, and how very slyly and very quietly it's becoming even more and more powerful. They will have a grip on everything soon. And when you add into the fact about the ever-growing 5G market and how much of that they are a part of, I mean, if you're not already learning to speak Chinese, I suggest you start. I hope you guys have enjoyed today's video. I would please ask that you like, share and subscribe, and the key bit here is that if you're already liked and subscribed, that you please share. Even if you don't agree with what I'm saying, I don't mind if you share it to your Facebook and say, look at this idiot, he's completely wrong, yada yada yada. Please just share the video, because that is what gets the channel growing, and we'll get more people involved and we can get more conspiracies done, and it makes me happy the more people watch.